We are in Sparta. I will never forget seeing this movie for the first time in Waynesville, Missouri. The theater was packed with soldiers because it was right next to Fort Leonard Wood, a military base. I was still in my last year of high school at the time. However, when the movie began, everything seemed to quiet down, and I could feel the stress and excitement in the air. But what I remember most is how I felt like I couldn't take my eyes off the TV during any scene. When I watched this, I swear my testosterone level went through the roof. Every person who left the theater after the show felt like a real warrior. I thought I could lift a car because I felt like I was 10 feet tall. And if someone challenged me that night, I wouldn't think twice about going to war. That person was brave, but I didn't know that their story was full of problems and trials. For both the warriors on screen and the people who worked on the movie. Did you know that just for one thing she did in the movie, Lena Headey, who played Gorgo, was criticized so badly by men that she almost went depressed? Or the real reason why people didn't want to see the movie, it lied about history and even got threats from the Iranian government for hurting Persian culture. Even though not many people know about them, these secrets are a big part of what made 300 so powerful and famous. Let's look into the hidden facts about this famous movie. 20. Critics said the movie twisted history, so it was not shown. When the movie came out, I remember very heated arguments among fans. Some said that many scenes in the movie lied about history. The Iranian government even shut them down and hired people to bother the actors, which put them in risk. Zack Snyder remembered, "We always knew we were taking a chance by relying on a story that was made up. But being true to history wasn't our goal. It was meant to make you feel like a hero." However, a lot of people didn't like how Sparta was shown to be fighting by herself at Thermopylae and how the phalanx was represented incorrectly in the movie. Howard Hesserman, Dr. Johnny Fever said, "We got a lot of bad feedback from historians and groups. To us 300, on the other hand, is a story based on legends, not facts." One of the biggest surprises was how strongly the Iranian Cultural Council reacted. During the promotional effort, they asked Warner Brothers to increase security, and there were even boycotts around the world. Even though it was criticized for being inaccurate, 300 was still a huge hit because it told a famous story about the will to fight. After seeing the movie, many fans said they felt motivated and wanted to learn more about history. That wasn't something that a film group could do at that time. 19. Some scenes were called too sexy and were almost thrown out. A lot of people couldn't take their eyes off the movie's powerful and moving scenes. But some of these scenes, even though they were interesting, made the MPAA worried about how sensitive they were. The scene where the oracle dances and the scene where Xerxes touches Leonidas were both thought to be too sexy and were almost cut. Gerard Butler remembered, "The scene where I face Xerxes was really one of the ones I'll never forget. I thought it made the mood tense and sensual, so I couldn't see it being cut." Lena Headey, who played Gorgo, said, "We tried to make those scenes very emotional, but people don't always know the difference between an artistic scene and one that's too sensitive." Zack Snyder said he didn't want to take away anything from those scenes. They were about more than just sex. They were about strong bonds, feeling, and power. I believe the movie would lose something important if we cut them. Warner Brothers had to cut some parts out of the movie in order to stay within the MPAA's rules. These scenes, however, became memorable parts of the movie and added to the legendary feel that 300 had. Told players they couldn't wear shirts on set. If you've seen the movie 300, you may remember how big the Spartan troops were. But not many people know that Zack Snyder actually told players they couldn't wear shirts on set. Like in Frank Miller's original work, where the fighters walk around the battlefield like statues carved from stone, he wanted to stay true to the style of that book. A member of the crew remembers that Zack told us not to wear shirts, coats, or other coverings. The set looked like a mix of a gym and a fight because of this. Butler laughed and said, "I've never seen so many abs in one room before." An extra player remembered that we couldn't wear anything, whether it was hot or cold. Zack just said, "You guys are such jerks." Snyder wanted the players to always be aware of their bodies, meaning they had to keep their posture and flex their muscles. They were walking like real heroes. Someone who works in training on set also said, he didn't want them to play Spartans. He told them they had to live like Spartans all the time. The choice to not wear a shirt seemed extreme at the time, but it led to one of the most famous movie scenes of the early 2000s. The brave Spartan fighter went up against Snyder's Golden Light. 17. Men really didn't like Lena Headey. Every time I watch the movie, Lena Headey amazes me, both because of how strong she is and because of how she plays Leonidas's faithful wife, Gorger. Someone who is strong enough to stand by her great husband but also ready to give up everything to protect Sparta. I will always remember the times when she stands strong in tough situations, her eyes filled with purpose. But did you know that after the movie came out, some men in the crowd hated Lena Headey despite all of this? Some people thought that her character Gorgo gave up her body too easily to save Sparta. This scene takes place when Gorgo makes a terrible deal with the Spartan leaders to get them to back her husband in the fight. To get the military help that Leonidas needs so badly, she decides to trade her body with a Spartan official. Hetty once said in a sad voice, "People can't tell the difference between the actress and the role. They think I'm the bad woman they see on TV." A guy fan even sent her a message. "You ruined what a strong woman looks like." Lena only said a few words. "This is just my job." Zack Snyder also spoke up for her. In the story, that scene is there for a reason. People shouldn't say those mean things about Lena. He remembered that Lena is one of the toughest people he's ever met. She knew how important the part was, but I didn't think the reaction would be so strong. Due to the fact that Gorgo is a tragic, strong, and complex character, Lena Headey, an actor who works hard, had to deal with the pain of unfair criticism. People didn't understand Lena wasn't Gorgo or Cersei until after they got to know and love her on Game of Thrones. She was just putting on a strong show. 16. The actors said the set was hell. When the movie came out, all the guys in my neighborhood were crazy about how strong the Spartan knights were. They thought that making movies about guys with such perfect bodies was a gift from God. But things were not at all what they thought they would be. They went through 8 weeks of what many players called hellish ordeal. Snyder asked world record-holding mountain climber Mark Twight to train them in the true Spartan way. On the first day, Twight told her straight out, "I will push you harder than I've ever pushed myself." But Butler only sighed. "I've never worked so hard at something." The activities, like flipping tires, running up and down hills, lifting weights, and endurance training, were so hard on their bodies that they were almost broken. Since the practice wasn't done more than once, the body didn't have a chance to get used to it. As a supporting player said, "There were days when I got sick after the first workout." Someone else laughed meanly. "I had dreams about pizza all the time." The players had to weigh every gram of chicken, with no butter or salt added. What they went through, from the hot set to the heavy outfits, will stay with them forever. Some days, only 2 of the 6 supporting players could keep working because they were too tired and thirsty to keep going. Gareth Butler. Someone who played Leonidas didn't hold back. "I've never worked so hard at something in my life." But this suffering made a picture of the Spartan warrior that was not only strong but also real, not inflated or exaggerated. Why do I remember it every time I watch the movie again? Because it was part of the truth. 15. I still remember the first time I saw the big fight scenes in 300, Gerard Butler almost went blind while shooting them. When the weapons hit each other, dust flew everywhere, and a strong sword hit. But not many people know that behind the scenes, Leonidas actor, Gerard Butler, paid with his health. His eyes were hit by dirt and debris during a very intense fight scene. He had to stop shooting for a few days. Butler remembered that scene as being crazy. "I couldn't see anything because the sand and dirt hit my eyes right away. I had to stop immediately." He continued, "At that moment, the only thing I could think of was, am I going to go blind?" Zack Snyder shared. "We were worried, but Butler didn't want to stop. He said, 'I'm a Spartan. I won't give up.'" In reality, this accident almost caused him temporary blindness and the crew even considered using a body double. But Butler, with an unbreakable determination, returned to the set and continued to leave a strong impression. He said, "The fight scenes in the film truly reflect Butler's relentless effort." 14. Frank Miller has been obsessed with Sparta since childhood. I still remember first time I watched the film The 300 Spartans from 1962. It was a truly memorable experience, a memory that can never fade. The sight of the Spartan warriors standing strong against the Persian army, even the heroic lines of King Leonidas left a deep impression on me. It's surprising to know that Frank Miller, the author of 300, had a special love for Sparta since he was young. The 1962 film planted a passionate obsession in his mind for the history and warrior spirit of Sparta. Frank Miller shared, "Watched the 300 Spartans when I was a kid and immediately became captivated. There was something about that battle, their sacrifice, the brutality that made me think about it constantly. Hugh Wilson added, when Miller started writing 300, he didn't care about historical accuracy. Instead, he focused on the spirit, the emotion that the battle represented. Miller also recalled, with this passion, Miller created a work that not only reimagined the Spartan warriors, but also brought forth a legend that would live on through time, deeply influencing cinema and popular culture. At first, no one wanted to make the film. Few know that when 300 was first announced, studios were not very confident in the project. An ancient film based on a graphic novel that wasn't well known, with no big stars and a completely new style, too weird. That's what they said. They thought it was a gamble that wasn't worth investing in. But Zack Snyder, the director of the film, didn't give up. He knew this was the only chance to create something truly unique. And he shot a demo himself. I wouldn't accept being turned down. This is the story I want to tell, Snyder shared. He made a very short demo that captured Frank Miller's style, darkness, speed, and violence. And surprisingly, Warner Brothers was convinced. They agreed with Snyder, not just because he had faith in the project, but because Snyder helped them see something they couldn't have imagined. What started from doubt and rejection ultimately became one of Hollywood's biggest successes. Butler was really injured but continued filming. I've always admired Gerard Butler, an actor who's not only strong on screen but truly lives every role. While filming 300, Butler had a serious accident during one of the fight scenes. The intense sequence caused him to tear a muscle, get bruised, and have days when he couldn't even lift his shield. But what's truly admirable is that he didn't quit. Butler recalled, there were days I couldn't move, but I knew I couldn't stop. I had to be worthy of the Spartan role. I had to be a true warrior. He added. My body felt like it was against me, but I told myself, if I don't fight, how can I expect the warriors in 300 to do it? The movie's director, Zack Snyder, said that Gerard has a strong will to fight. It was hard for him, but he didn't give up. We're very thankful for how strong he was. What with? As Butler went through his life, his role in 300 wasn't just that of a Spartan fighter, it was also a tribute to the sacrifice and endurance he showed on screen and in real life. 11. The scene from This Is Sparta almost didn't make it. Even though I didn't think it would go down in history, I had to shout it. This is how Gerard Butler talked about the scene that became famous. Even though it almost didn't make 300. At first, Leonidas' line was just a quiet statement in the script. Butler, however, chose to try screaming it, which changed the whole situation. The movie's director, Zack Snyder, said, when Gerard tried to shout, we were shocked. Right away, I knew it would be a moment I would never forget. It was strong and full of energy. Before the movie got sent to Warner Brothers, there was some discussion about the line. They thought it was too dramatic and didn't fit the idea of a Spartan fighter. Snyder remembered and told me that it's too dramatic and too funny. It won't last. I chose to keep it, though. I thought that This Is Sparta should be in the movie. Because of this, the line became a culture icon, and it has been used in millions of funny conversations since then. He laughed and said, I never thought such a simple line would become so important in history. The Dead Tree was based on a true story. Not only did 300 shock people with its fights and violence, but it also showed them horrible pictures of war. Like the Tree of the Dead, a strong picture that stands for hate and cruelty. Warner Brothers didn't want to keep this scene in the movie at first, but Zack Snyder was set on keeping it. The screenwriter for Kurt Jonko said, we thought this image would be very strong and necessary. And Snyder agreed. That picture says more about how cruel and tense the war was than anything else. It sends a strong message. This scene is very disturbing, but it wasn't just about violence. It was also a reminder of how hard war is and how much the Spartan soldiers gave up. 300, even though the Tree of the Dead isn't based on real events, it did a great job of showing how scary and terrible war can be. 9. Most of the blood in the movie was made with computer graphics. There are bloody scenes in 300 that have always interested me. The Spartan fighters fight so badly and so powerfully that blood is everywhere, making for both scary and interesting sights. But not many people know that even though the movie is very bloody, only 2 gallons of fake blood were used on set. After the movie was made, special effects were used to add the rest of the blood splatters and huge pools of blood. Zack Snyder said, "We wanted to make fight scenes that people would never forget, and CGI was the tool that helped us do that. We were able to precisely control the direction of the blood splatter and everything else by using this method." Frank Miller, who wrote 300, also said, "So, thanks to CGI, those bloody fight scenes didn't just bring brutality, they became a work of art." In other words, the blood wasn't just added to shock people, it was used to show the strength and pain of war, which kept people hooked to the screen. 8th, the Oracle made up the forecast on the spot. The Oracle's prediction is one of the strangest and most mysterious parts of 300. But did you know that the scene was made up on the spot? Kelly Craig, who played the Oracle, made up the forecast on the spot using sounds that had nothing to do with the story. Later, Zack Snyder chose to keep it, and a strange picture from that scene was used in the movie. Kelly Craig remembered that she didn't have any exact lines to say when she was asked to give the prophecy. "I was sure I had to make a sound that would hold people's attention." He also said, "At that time, I didn't want a normal prophecy. I wanted to do something obscure and strange so that people wouldn't understand right away." In this way, the completely made-up prophecy produced a mysterious and magical atmosphere for 300. That scene was not only powerful, but also full of meaning. To make this scene seem strange, it was filmed underwater, which made watchers feel like they were in a different world. That was one of the magical moments that turned 300 into more than just an action movie. It was also a story of legend and wonder. The fight moves came from real events. You might think the intense fight scenes in 300 are made up or with graphic effects when you watch them. But in fact, Zack Snyder and the rest of the film crew did a lot of research to make sure they got the Spartan strategies right. History shows that the Spartans used moves like the shield bash, the spear thrust, and the phalanx formation. Snyder said that he didn't want to make a movie just for fun. Each move and strategy had to be based on past events. "We wanted to make a movie that was based on real events and was also dramatic and intense." Gareth Butler. "Leonidas told us we had to learn how to use fancy moves and protect spears. Everything was looked into in great detail. That was a big part of getting the real Spartan attitude across." Michael Fassbender Stelios also remembered, "We had to train a lot, not just to get stronger, but also to learn how to fight. It felt a lot like real military training." There is more to the movie than just a story about war. It recreates the spirit and strategies of one of the most famous armies in history. Not only did 300 show us a fight, it also brought history to life on the big screen. 6. A green screen was used for 90% of the picture. Most 300 fans believe that the movie was filmed on the vast fields of Greece or the beautiful scenery of the Spartan battleground. But the truth is that 90% of the movie was shot in a warehouse in Montreal using CGI effects, a green screen, and special lighting. Using color grading and CGI, every setting, from the battlefield to the towns, was made. Zack Snyder said, "We didn't film in Greece. There were no real places. Lights and CGI were all that was used. It wasn't to be realistic, it was to make people feel strongly." Butler said, "I really felt like a Spartan warrior when I stood in front of the green screen and imagined I was on the battlefield." Snyder said, "We didn't want to make this movie like a typical period piece. We wanted to add a strong graphic element instead, like a tale with historical roots. And it was that green screen that helped 300 make a stunning virtual world where every detail was carefully and powerfully made to give viewers a deeply emotional experience." 5. It took over 5 hours every day to become Xerxes. If you saw the movie E100, you may remember the picture of a beautiful Persian king with a noble air. But not many people know that Rodrigo Santoro, who played Xerxes, spent more than 5 hours a day just putting on makeup to look that way. To give Xerxes his mysterious and one-of-a-kind look, tattoos, metal chains, and metallic paint were used. Santoro remembered, "Every day I had to sit for more than 5 hours to do the makeup. While it was awkward at first, I grew to enjoy the process over time." Zack Snyder said that Xerxes is a unique figure. "I wanted him to be a strong king and a sign of power and power over everything else. The makeup was very detailed, which helped make this figure come to life." Rodrigo Santoro also said, "Even though it took a lot of work and time, when I looked in the mirror and saw myself as Xerxes, I really felt like an untouchable king." Because of these details, Xerxes became one of the most memorable figures in the movie, with his unique look and strong presence. Agoj was even meaner in real life than in the movie. You think of the Spartan heroes as tough and strong when you think of the movie 300. But did you know that the problems they faced in real life were even worse? Agoga. Sparta's soldiers were trained to be tough from a very young age. As young as 7 years old had to be taken away from their homes and go hungry. To become real fighters, they had to take cold beatings and fight non-stop. Frank Miller, who wrote 300, shared. The reason I wrote about Agoge was to show how cruel and violent Sparta was. Warriors were taught not only to be strong, but also to have a strong will. Zack Snyder said that the movie only shows a small part of Agoge. To become real Spartans, they had to go through unbearable trials. Gareth Butler. Leonidas also said, I had to learn a lot about Agoge in order to understand the fighting spirit of the. It wasn't just about being strong. Was all about never giving up. Even though 300 only shows a small part of Agoge, the movie makes it clear how strong and brave the Spartan soldiers were. To become heroes and protect their home country at all costs, the children of Sparta had to live in harsh conditions. 3. The scene where Leonidas and Gorgo say goodbye was left alone because it was so real. There are parts of 300 that really make you feel, and the scene where Leonidas and Gorgo say goodbye is one of the most moving. This scene was already in the script, but Gerard Butler and Lena Headey's honest acting made it so moving that Zack Snyder chose to leave it alone. Lena Headey Gorgo said, when we were filming this scene, Jared and I didn't need a complicated script. We only wanted to make people feel real emotions. And everything just worked out. She said, this was one of the hardest scenes I've ever had to film. It wasn't just about how the actors felt, it was also about what they gave up and their promise to protect Sparta. He said, right then, I knew this would be one of the most moving scenes in the movie. I didn't cut it right away, though. We let the players show how they feel naturally. This goodbye scene became one of the most famous parts of the movie, making sure that people will always remember how much Leonidas and Gorgo loved each other and gave up for each other. These parts of 300 really became its soul and touched people's hearts. Warner Brothers wanted the movie to be PG-13 at first. As you may or may not know, Warner Brothers was afraid at first that 300's high level of violence would keep mainstream audiences away. At first, they wanted the movie to have less bloodshed so that it would get a PG-13 rating and appeal to more people. But Zack Snyder strongly supported his choice to keep the spirit of the graphic novel alive. Snyder said, this is a story about Spartan warriors, and the movie would lose its power without real battle scenes. Gareth Butler. The movie 300, Rise of an Empire is more than just a war movie. It's a movie about bravery and giving up things you want. The movie wouldn't have that spirit without violence. Warner Brothers decided to keep the R rating in the end, and the movie made over $200 million. Far beating what was expected at first. 300 show that sometimes you have to take risks and stay true to the heart of the movie you want to make. In this way, 300 became one of the most famous action movies ever made. It also changed the way these movies were made and how people felt about them. 1. 300 turned out to be a surprise hit. No one could have known when 300 came out that it would become a worldwide hit. Going above and beyond standards and becoming a cultural icon. The movie wasn't based on real events or famous people, and it was very brutal. But 300 won people over with great special effects and a strong graphic style. Everyone thought this movie would fail when Zack Snyder started making it, he said. We did not have a lot of money, famous people, or real places to film in. But I was sure that people would remember the movie I was making. Gareth Butler. Leonidas also said, at first, I wasn't sure if the movie would do well. But as soon as I saw the story and the way it was going to be filmed, I knew I had to take this chance. Following that, the movie made $450 million after having cost $65 million to make. 300 wasn't just a sports movie. It became a culture icon and changed the way action movies are made. And making a big splash in the movie business. 300 is an important movie in film history because of its strong characters and vivid fight scenes. It also changed the way action movies were made in a big way. Thanks for following along. Please like, share, and follow if you enjoyed this video so that you don't miss any future ones. Feel free to share your ideas in the space below. Please get in touch with me. We'll see you in the next movie.